Oh, hi everybody, and welcome to the show. Dave Emmons and the Strange Reality. We always have very interesting shows and very interesting people and credible people and incredible people too. And I guess today, I think a lot of people know him. Even before I even mention him, they'll probably know him just by name alone. And let's give you a clue. The spooky Skunk Works. He was familiar with all that and worked around with all that. And he's going to tell us a lot of things about all this that he's learned through the past being in the Air Force. And we're going to go, I don't know how long, maybe an hour and a half, as long as Jim. And it's Jim Goodall. He's my guest today. And my brother Jack Emmons is sitting in the studio with me, just observing things. And I didn't get him a headset to work with him because I had a mono connection and there's a technical issue. So that's that he's going to be watching and seeing how things work in this type of studio. Jim Goodall, a guy that has been around for years, and so have I. I have to say that too. And my brother, and also Jack, he's been around for some years. But and how did a kid who grew up in the middle of a former apricot orchard that is now called Silicon Valley? I guess he knew it before it became famous. A world-leading expert on the Lockheed Skunk Works, Area 51, and things that go bump in the night. It started with a handful of random events. His very first exposure and ultimately his love for all things Skunk Works and airplanes in general began with a brief encounter that cemented my fascination and love for airplanes, he says. The time was 1950 and 51. He was just a little guy then, and had an interest in this. He lived in a duplex in San Jose Municipal Airport, and so he's always been around, I guess, airports or things that really go bump in the night in the Air Force. He moved forward a few years. Let's call it when he was a little kid and he had those experiences. He moved forward a few years and now calls Los Altos, California, home in 1954. Said his best friend's dad was a commander of Moffett Field Naval Air Station. I guess you can see where he got I guess, the fever for being in the Air Force and airlines and things of that nature and the ships. And on a particular day, he said Danny and him had something to show him. He headed, he said, we headed over to the big hangar one and went to a fore end nearest to the bay. There was an area that was roped off with curtains shielding something very special behind the veil of secrecy. There were no guards, just a sign that read off limits. Too tempting for a couple of 7-year-olds. He's only 7 years old and he's getting involved in top secret stuff, and usually by slipping and by accident. Behind the curtain was the still secret Lockheed XF 104 Starfighter. And they walked around in awe as they looked at this thing. Now, fast forward to March 1964. He's 18 years old and an airman, second class, and name of the rank was changed for PC reasons. I guess he'll explain that the second class name of the rank was changed for PC reasons in the Air Force and was sent TDY, temporary duty, to Edwards Air Force Base. And that's another big, I guess, secret base. And on March 10th, 1964, approximately 15 hours, I saw what was to change his life, he said, forever. On that XB-70 test pad was what I first thought was a North American X-15 rocket plane, but the people were way too small. Much to my amazement, I had my first glimpse of Kelly's incredible Mach 3 plus Blackbird in full afterburners, the YF-12A. I've never been the same since. So he's seen these things that really give him some eye-opening experiences. In the spring of 68, via the U.S. Postal Service, he formally asked Lockheed, United States Air Force, Department of Defense, and Central Intelligence Agency for unclassified photos of the SR-71 on the ground and on the air, and he was willing to pay the published rate for color. So he got into photography and journalism, I guess, along with his Air Force duty. The year 1975 was a watershed year, and he said his dear friend, John Andrews, introduced him to aviation character named John Lear, and he'll talk about that. In November 1988, after seeing and photographing the Lockheed Skunk Works F-117 for the first time, and he had, I guess what they had this, there was a fence line at Tonopah Test Range, TTR. John Lear and him, they went back to Las Vegas. We arrived at John's home at about 9:15 p.m. and 10 minutes later, a young man showed up. I had print film. He's telling a story about him and John Lear meeting up and doing this. I had print film that needed to be processed and all the photo mats way before digital photography were closed. I wouldn't know any of these images were any good until well into the next day. John's friend told me that he had Kodak C41 film. That really takes back me in years too, and a processor at his home. That friend was a guy named Bob Lazar. How synchronicity happens with Jim Goodall. Great. We needed to head back to John's friend's home to process some film. So the story goes on that they did the process of film, took the pictures of F-117A, and had an Air Force, Lockheed, DOD, and CIA honored your photo request in 1968. I would have been happy to just move along, but as with all government things, the unofficial official policy was not to cooperate. So I started digging for more, and he was a curious guy, kept digging. This is what made him famous for what he knows and what he's been through. He would not be where he is today in the field of spooky programs if our government had given him what he wanted in 1968. I would have remained happy, and my name would never have been associated with Area 51, the Blackbirds, the F-117, or the Skunk Works, and Ben R. Rich. I heard that name too. A lot of famous people in that circle, and I would never have been friends. That's how a young kid from Los Altos ended up 60 plus years later being an expert on much of what has come out of the brilliant minds of men and women at the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. Jim Goodall, thank you. And I tried to shorten that by shortening, and I kind of tripped and stumbled. Maybe you can help me pick me back up. Explain a little bit about your bio. This is Jim Goodall. Welcome to the show, The Strange Reality, Jim.
Dave, I'm delighted to be here. I'm glad we finally linked up. My passion started as a real young kid in 1951 time frame. We were living in San Jose, like you'd said earlier. My dad came in and said, "There's something coming. You got to see it." So we went out. We went out on the out the front door, looking towards the Coast Mountains, and coming up the Coast Mountains, heading to Travis for not one, not two, but 24 Convair B-36s.
Wow.
They had 30. I think they said they had 37 of them at Guam. It was a show of power to the Russians, the Chinese, and the North Koreans, because this was during the Korean War.
Right.
And they could only get 24 in the air when they headed back. They took off from Guam. They flew south along right through the middle of the Straits of Formosa, along the Chinese border, along the North Korean border, and then headed home. And what I saw was them coming home. For years, I thought it was 18. And I worked at the Museum of Flight as a restoration manager. And there's a gentleman that was on the tour. I was given a tour of, we're working on a B-29 there. I was in charge of the Havilland Comet restoration, the world's first jet airliner. And he asked me, he said, "Yeah, where did your fascination with airplanes come?" So I told him, and he said, "Well, it wasn't 18 airplanes." And I'm thinking to myself, maybe it was 6. He said, "It was 24." And I said, "Well, how do you know?" He said, "I was a flight engineer in the lead airplane." So that's why he knew.
Wow.
So, and then in my encounter with the XF-104, Danny was my friend, and that's when he called me and said, "You got to come out to Moffett," and he had to meet me at the gate. And all the shore patrol and Marine guards referred to us as Captain Smith's son and that friend of his. Oh. We were around so much that we were invisible in plain. We were hiding in plain sight.
Mm-hmm.
So I rode my bike over there. This is 1954, I think it was, a long time ago. Just 70 years ago. My God.
And, you know, what fascinates me, Jim, is that you started at 5 years old of having an interest in aircraft and this type of thing.
An
Did you,
obsession, an
on this,
obsession, not
do
an
you,
interest, an
yeah,
obsession.
yeah. Did you think that the something intervened in you and said, "Do this, Jim"? Is this what your life purpose is?
I I don't believe in fate, so to speak. Things happen because they're supposed to.
Hmm.
People coming into your life because they're supposed to. And I guess my charge was to be a pain in the butt to the military and to the government because I have been. I mean,
Yeah.
it just uh, remember I was when we got the word that our museum, uh, based on my efforts, we're getting an A-12 Blackbird, and I went over to see it. So I went over. I had called up, and they knew I was coming, and I went over to the Skunk Works. This is after they moved to Palmdale, and I go into security office. It's outside the fence line of the Skunk Works.
Hmm.
And there was no one there, but I could hear someone in the back room. So I pressed the buzzer, and it says, "Who's there?" And I said, "Jim Goodall." Dead silence for a second. Said, "The Jim Goodall?" I said, "Well, there's five of us total. My grandfather, my father, myself, my son, and my grandson James. But I'm probably the one you're looking for." And she came around the corner and looked at me. She said, "You're not the 800-pound gorilla you've been made out to be." She says, "I've been here for 21 years. I heard your name." She's a security person. "I heard your name on the first week I was with the Skunk Works. And I've heard your name at probably right around once a quarter for 20, 25 years." And I just laughed. I said, "Well, I had a dear friend at the Skunk Works. His name was Ben R. Rich. And we talked once a quarter for about 20 plus years.
Hmm.
And I'd call him or he'd call me. And it's just, it was a relationship that I'm not sure how I got into it. He, he just enjoyed, he thoroughly enjoyed my love affair of Lockheed Skunk Works airplanes. And it's one of the reasons our museum got an A-12 Blackbird.
Hmm.
Because
Now,
in August of '89, he calls me at home and he said, "Jim, I got it from," he was going to say the horse's rear, but he said, "I got it from the horse's," a little bit of pause,
yeah.
"mouth, that the Blackbirds aren't going to make through Congress. And if anybody could scrounge one, it's you." So I took the challenge. I went over to the base. I got on to Autobahn. This is before cell phones, so long distance calls were expensive. And I called the Adjutant General of the state of New York, General Paul Weaver.
Hmm.
I called the number up. The secretary answered the phone and said, "Yes, this is Sergeant Goodall with the 133rd. Is General Weaver available?" "Just a minute, Sarge. I'll put you through." So he puts me through. General Weaver's answers the phone. He said, "Sarge, what can I do for you?" And I said, "General, I got a proposition for you." He said, "What's that?" He said, "How would the New York Air Guard like to move the world's fastest airplane in a couple of your C5s?" Dead silence for about 10 seconds. He said, "You mean the Blackbird?" I said, "Yes, sir." And he says, "When you're ready, you call Will Hall. We'll use this as outside cargo loading and transport."
Hmm.
So I scrounged two C5s, including an A-12 Blackbird, as a tech sergeant at United States Air Force / Minnesota Air Guard. Couldn't do it today. And even, I look back and I say, how in the hell did I pull this off?
That's what I was just going to ask you, Jim. I know the Skunk Works started in the early 50s, and I know you
Early 40s,
early
1940,
40s, really.
1943 was
Yeah,
the beginning.
and I know you were involved in it. You were involved in the, I guess, as 5 years old, but you didn't really get involved technically until you were a teenager or 18 years of age when you went into the Air Force. How
Correct.
did you slick this over with people in the military? Because now, like you said, the military is very tight with everything, and even
I the sales job only starts when the customer says no. So, you know, I solved the problem uh, with the how we're going to transport it. I had contacted the Dayton Hudson Marshall Fields Company, which is they renamed it now just Target.
Mhm.
They're out of Minneapolis. I knew the creative director. I went to 3M. I went to Rosemont Engineering. They do the static pitot tube and air data systems. And 3M, they made a lot of special adhesives for the Blackbirds. And I raised the money. I got the Pontiac Motor Division of General Motors to lend us 3 Pontiac transports. This is 1990 for use as long as we needed them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just one thing after another. But we managed to secure the airplane. We took it apart in 2.5 days, and it's the most fun thing I've ever done.
It sounds like you enjoyed what you were doing,
Oh,
and
most my last several jobs that paid the bills were jobs I would have done for nothing if I hadn't had so many ex-wives.
really,
Yeah, they drain me dry pretty good money wise. So
yeah. I don't want to ask how many.
well, I'm on number 4.
Okay, I had well, 2. I guess I have to be honest, So I know all about this divorce thing and everything, but I'm fascinated by how you were able to navigate through all the thick, secrecy and
Because I don't take no for an answer. I when I when I contacted when I got contacted the New York Air Guard and got the okay, then I contacted the most senior politician from Minnesota in the federal government. We had there were 2 senators and 8 Congress critters, and it was split 50-50. They were half Democrats, half Republicans.
Mhm.
They all signed off on us getting the airplane because there was so much Minnesota involvement in the program. Honeywell had all the avionics, the stabilization augmentation system, the autopilot, the inlet control system, a lot of the environmental controls. Rosemont, the same way. They had the static pitot tube and all the air data systems. 3M with all the adhesives. So I got the entire Minnesota congressional delegation to sign off on this project, and they have never all agreed before or since on anything. So that right there was a just a sort of a feather in my cap. And the thing about the C5s, Pratt and Whitney was thinking about trying to get one for West Palm Beach. That's where they developed the engines. Even though they started off in West Hartford, Connecticut, but they did all the engine rebuild and testing there at West Palm Beach. And
The
they were going to pay for
C5, the C5, Jim. What is that aircraft?
That's the Air Force's largest cargo aircraft.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought you was talking about. I just
Yeah.
want people out there to know that because you were talking about the X-115 or X-15 and stuff like that, and I thought maybe it was another supersonic plane, but it's a
No. It's how we transported
right. Yeah.
the fuselage and the outer wing panels from Palmdale to Minnesota,
Okay.
and it was just it was a series of events that everything lined up perfectly. I'm I a lot of guys in the military are really afraid of senior people, generals and admirals. I'm not. They put their pants on the same way I do. If I were to hit them with my car, they would bleed the same way, whether they
Right.
were a civilian or a 4-star general.
Now you did salute them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, but one of the real funnies now. I've known Bob Lazar, as you mentioned earlier. I met
Oh
him
yeah, I want to know about that. Yes.
in January of '89, and the way it transpired on the in November of '89, it was November 11th and November 22nd. And on the 11th, they announced the existence of the F-117 stealth fighter. And on the 22nd, they announced the existence of the B-2.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I knew the B-2 was going to be flying out of Palmdale eventually, and I knew the F-117. Didn't know what it looked like, but I knew he was flying out of Area 51, and operationally he was flying out of Tonopah Test Range, also referred to as TTR.
Right.
So I called my buddy John Lear up, and I said, "Hey, I'm coming into town. Let's see if we can get a shot of an F-117." So I flew into Vegas. I get a car. I go pick up John, and we're heading up US 95 out of Las Vegas, heading into the town of Tonopah. And we're about 2/3 of the way there, and we're just past Scotty's Junction, and an F-117 flies over us at about 1,500 feet at about a 45-degree angle, crossing the path of the road. I almost crashed the car. I mean, here we had that one real bad photo. It was backlit. It was used a telephoto lens, so the image was squished.
Right.
So we stopped in Tonopah for a quick bite. We hit US 6, went out east for 14 miles, and there's a big sign that says Tonopah Test Range. So I drive down that road. It's 18 miles to the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm at the time I was still in the Air Guard, so I had my military ID. I could get on any base except for restricted bases like Tonopah Test Range. So John and I just drove down the fence line on the public land side, and you can see the whole base. And I look to the north, and I see a black fuzzy ball with a little light underneath, and a little bluish white fuzzy ball with a light underneath. So I figured that was an F-117 and a chase plane. And this is before digital cameras. I was shooting with a Nikon. I had Nikon lenses. I was using Kodacolor 100. It's a real fine grain print film from Kodak.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I had 36 or 37 exposures in my in my camera. And as it's coming towards me, as it's filling up my viewfinder, all of a sudden my body starts vibrating. I mean, I couldn't stop shaking. It was like I was a 10-year-old boy seeing a naked woman for the very first time. I mean, my heart was about ready to jump out of my chest. I'm photographing something that no one has really seen.
Mm-hmm.
And if he finally, goes past this, we watch him land. We jump in the car. Says, "Let's get out of here. We got to get to Vegas. I got to get to a photo mat." And if those of you out there that don't have white hair or hair,
Yeah.
there's back in the 60s, 70s, and I think in the 80s it sort of went away.
Yes, it did. Photo mats. Yes.
There was some in the 90s, but when digital cameras started coming, there would be less and less people.
Right.
And it's a kiosk at a shopping center, and most of them have been taken over by coffee baristas. But is it maybe a 10 by 15 building, and you're in there, the same colors as Kodak. You didn't even have to get out of your car. They hand you an envelope, you put your name on it, you took the claim tab off of it, put your film in it, handed it back to them, and you came back the next day. So I knew we weren't going to get back to Vegas in time to go to a photo mat. So I'm going to have to wait an additional day and then another day to get it, and it was driving me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So John and I, we leave. We get the Warm Springs, which is on US 6, which is the northern terminus of the extraterrestrial highway, Nevada 375. We head south. We stopped at the Little Alien. First time I was there was June of '87, and just stopped by. I got something to eat, and on my way to Las Vegas. So John and I stopped there. I've known Joe and Pat Travis pretty much since they bought the place. And so we're heading back to Las Vegas, and John said, I have a new friend. He just moved here from Albuquerque. I think you'll like him. He's very interesting. He's interviewing for a job out in the desert. He doesn't know doing what, but he'll be there. He'll be there shortly after we arrive. So we got there about 9:15 p.m. and we're in John's study, and there's a knock on the door. John goes, answers the door. This young man comes in, very soft spoken. He introduced himself as Bob Lazar. He had been at Sandia, and he wasn't sure what kind of job he was going to do out in the desert, but it was almost the very end of his review process to upgrade his Q clearance, which is the civilian version of top secret.
Right.
And so I told him about my dilemma. I have this print film on the F-117. I don't know if I have anything that's good. He said, well, I have a C41 processor at home. I develop photos for real estate agents just to keep my mind busy as I'm waiting for my clearance. So let's run over my place. John lived near Nellis. His backdrop was Sunrise Ridge. Bob lived off of West Charleston, about a half hour away. We jump in his car. We're not more than a block from Lear's house. And he looks at me and he says, I feel sorry for that dumb son of a bitch, Lear. I said, what do you mean? I said, the fool believes in UFOs. He says, I'm a nuclear physicist. If I can't prove it mathematically or put my hands on it, it doesn't exist.
He actually said that?
Yes.
Wow, that's historical. John Lear, as far as the people are concerned, he was a test pilot, and I guess a lot of people may not know him that don't have gray hair like we do, but he actually didn't he fly that Nighthawk or the Black Hawk jet?
No. He was certified on 58 or 61 aircraft type.
Right.
John's claim to fame, and he's when he died here a year ago in March.
Yes.
He still held 15 international FAI world records for flying, circumnavigating the globe in his dad's Learjet on his 16th birthday.
Yeah.
He had an FAI observer in the airplane with him, but he made it all the way around the world in record time. No one has been able to beat it because of all the different aircraft types he's flown. That's almost a record in itself.
Yeah.
He was also a certified A&P, both airframe and propulsion, whether it's radial engines, inline engines, the big V's like the Allisons, plus jet engines. He was certified to do all that. He was a one of a kind. There isn't anybody that will ever be like John Lear, because he was a one-off.
Yes, and he kept enlightening people of what was actually going on with UFO.
Yeah.
And I just wanted people to know a little bit about John Lear's background, because you two were buddies. Now let's get back to Bob Lazar. After he told you that he thought John Lear was a kook, what did you say, and how did that all turn out, Jim?
I just sort of filed it back there because there's a lot of people think that John Lear was a kook from time to time. But I was up at Bob Lazar's last May. I spent a couple of days there at his place. And I said, do you remember what you told me the evening we met back in January of '89? He said, you mean that I didn't believe in UFOs? I said, yeah, that. He said, yeah, I believe it. Bob has a photographic memory. He doesn't forget anything. And he is the most non-hostile, soft-spoken, easy to get along. He's a real sweetheart of a guy.
Yeah, he seems.
It's a shame that he was looked down on for so long. And one of the real funnies, and I've always believed in Bob. I have never questioned his honesty. I don't think he has a bone in his body that's designed to lie to people. he's a pretty straightforward, soft-spoken. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
He's,
Well, it sounds like all three of you, John, Lear, yourself, and then Bob, were all nice guys, and that's what brought you together, probably, that you're able to talk
it
and
was
communicate.
our destiny to be together.
Yeah, right.
Uh, but Bob is just. I asked him. I said, "Hey, when are you going to contact Congress?" And said, "Hey, I was one of the original whistleblowers." He said, "No, it's a hell with them." He said they had their chance 35 years ago, and they treated me like garbage ever since, and tried to slander me and call me a kook and a charlatan and someone who was full of it. And one of the funny things about uh, Bob Lazar is I had his W-2 from the Navy, and I was a reservist. I was an air guard. I was a weekender. I was
Mm-hmm.
a vice president of a company Monday through Friday, and on one weekend a month I was the wing historian or state staff historian. But he said he gave me his W-2 just for fun. I barked out his social security number, which had never been issued according to the federal government. He became a non-person
Yeah.
when he went public. So I'm in the Pentagon. I'm at Guard Bureau, and I have access to everything. So I go in. I had about 3 or 4 hours. I had an afternoon that nothing was happening. I don't know why nothing was happening, but I wasn't briefing any of the news people on what was happening in Desert Shield or Desert Storm. So I punch in Bob's Department of Navy location. Nothing comes up, so, which means it's probably a classified location. So I decided I looked up Naval Investigative Services, and they're on the D ring. So I wander over there. I'm in uniform. I'm a tech sergeant. I'm an E6. I had a fresh haircut. I was sharp. My shirt had good strong crease on it. I had all my ribbons, and I go up. The door's open. I go in there, and there's a young Lieutenant JG behind the table, the desk. And I said, "Sir, can you tell me where this place is located?" And I hand him Bob's W-2. And he looks at it and he says, "Excuse me, Sergeant, I'll be right back." He gets up, he goes into the 2-star's office. He's in there about 10 or 15 seconds, comes back out, and he says, "The Admiral will see you now." Now,
Oh,
those of you who have been in the military, especially if you've been in the Navy,
yeah.
no Navy 2-star admiral is going to talk to an enlisted puke, especially an Air National Guard enlisted puke, for any reason.
My experience exactly, Jim. I was in the military too. Yeah.
Yeah. So I go in there, I give him a sharp salute. He doesn't say at ease, he says parade rest. So I'm standing there at parade rest. He's holding Lazar's W-2 and his hand is shaking. He says, "Sergeant, I don't know where you got this, but if I ever see your face cross the threshold of my office ever again, you'll be the most sorriest son of a bitch NCO in the United States military. Do you understand me, Sergeant?" I
Mm.
said, "Yes, sir." And with that, he took Bob's W-2, put it in the shredder. He
Really?
said, "You're dismissed." I saluted him again, did an about face, and walked out. And I went, "Whoa,
Yeah.
did I
You
ever
had a
hit a sore
you
spot?"
had a copy made though, right?
No, no,
No.
I can get one from Bob.
Yeah.
I'll get one this May when I'm up visiting him.
Okay.
So, and I think Luigi Vinatelli, who's doing his Gravitas movie,
Mm-hmm.
is going to may be there as well. And uh, I'm listed as a technical consultant in the movie, and they're saying that they're going to. Luigi said he's going to try to get the Sphere in Las Vegas for the world premiere, and
Oh,
I'll be there as a VIP. So that should
okay.
be fun. That
And the
should be
main
fun.
the main takeaway from this movie that's being made, what is that all about? Is it about Bob and everything?
It is using very extensive computer capabilities They created S4.
Okay.
And when Bob was there, through the whole process, he's watching, they've been working on it for 2 years. When he saw some of the final cuts, he was blown away. He says, this is like, I'm there. This is so realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to come out. And then there's actually 3 parts to his coming out party, if you want to call it that. The movie Lazar that Jeremy, whatever his last name is, when he did Lazar, it was pretty much a promo for Jeremy, not Bob Lazar. And but that's a different time and a different world. And I don't care to go there.
Yeah. Now, when Skunk Works come out, they were to design the latest military aircraft, but did they also the second purpose they had was that to back engineer extraterrestrial technology?
Why actually my 28th book, 75 Years of Lockheed Skunk Works, when it came out, I was talking to the Skunk Works, and Jeff Babion said, would you care to come to the Skunk Works and do a book signing? It was like, beer, don't, to Beer Rabbit, please don't throw me into Briar Patch. I mean, I just, oh, yeah, you're going to have to twist my arm to come to the Skunk Works.
Right.
No, I have all sorts of security badges. And the thing I really enjoyed about them, I don't know if you can.
I see that one. Yes.
But what does it say at the bottom?
It says visitor, no secret,
no escort,
required. Yeah.
That's how much they trust me at the Skunk Works.
And you can still go there right now, just walk.
No, Jeff is retired, and my other friend, who I've known for 40 some odd years, he retired as well.
Right.
So I don't have any direct friends in the Skunk Works anymore. That doesn't mean I can't cultivate some. But...
All right, now with Bob Lazar, what has been going on with him the last couple of years? I heard early on that there was a couple of attempts on his life. Is that true, Jim?
Not that I'm aware of, but no, he was called up to Indian Springs, which is now Creech Air Force Base outside of Las Vegas, off of US 95. He was called up there after with Gene Huff, John Lear, and one other guy, and Bob Lazar were at the black mailbox for the Old Faithful, they call it. And they got harassed there. They didn't arrest anybody, but the next day or two, a couple of days later, they called Bob up at home and said, we need to meet with you face to face. Drive up to Indian Springs. We'll meet you there. So he's in the back seat of this sedan, and they put a gun to his head. And he said, we should just pull the trigger right now. And that's when Bob decided, I really can't speak for Bob, but this is my impression. This is when he decided he had to go public. He had to go and let the world know what he's doing before they killed him.
Could you tell us who was handling the gun? Was it military or?
No, it was spooks in a suit.
Oh.
So it could have been Defense Intelligence Agency. It could have been NCIS. It could have been anybody.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been contract killers.
The alphabet boys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So he, I think that's when he said he was going to go public. I mean, Bob, when George Knapp was looking into Bob's background, Bob said he worked at Sandia. He was there designing trying to improve the efficiency of nuclear weapons. Some bureaucrat wanted to get the kill ratio down from 12 cents of a kill down to 9 cents for a kill. I mean, what kind of idiot sits in his cubicle and comes up with that kind of crap?
Yeah.
But he did. And he pulled some funny stuff. He said they were doing something with lasers, and they were testing something that was trying to improve the yield of the B-61, which is the go-to nuclear weapon we have today. And so it was Halloween, so he put a jack-o'-lantern in the middle of the path of the laser, shooting at this object. And all of a sudden, they got all sorts of information that they weren't expecting. And they opened up the chamber, and there's this jack-o'-lantern with a big grin on his face with a hole through his head where they blasted it. And Lazar thought that was absolutely one of the funniest things he's ever done. And he said, but the people there have no sense of humor. But one of the things that he had told George Knapp is that he had a jet-powered dragster. It had a Lamborghini Countach, just a fiberglass shell over it. And he'd take to the drag races for exhibition. And he told George Knapp that I was written up in the Sandia newspaper. So George goes to the microfiche, going through it. He finds a picture. A nuclear weapons professor at Sandia relaxes on weekends by going 300 miles an hour in a quarter mile. And there's a picture of Bob.
Yeah.
His very distinctive glasses, which he doesn't wear anymore because he had LASIK surgery. And my mind just went blank. I hate that.
You're just talking about we went through LASIK surgery.
Oh yeah, he doesn't need
glasses. Yeah,
glasses anymore. But Bob Lazar is just a sweetheart of a guy, and he's been trashed by everybody. Not so much anymore because.
Now here lately, what's he been doing lately? I haven't seen much of him on the news or any reels on the internet or anything. What's he been doing lately, Jim?
They've just been finalizing, everything has to do with the movie.
Yeah.
And they've been doing that for 2 years. And I become friends with Luigi, the guy in charge of the Lazar project. And I'm hoping because he's Sicilian, like my mom's is 100% Sicilian. So we sort of have a bond there.
Yeah.
And I spent the summer of 72 in Montreal for 90 days.
You think he'll have an unbiased movie? I mean, he won't be slanting it towards him, but he will be talking about Bob Lazar directly about him.
This is the story of Bob Lazar.
Okay.
And it's going to show everything about him. But the most important thing is they've recreated in a digital form the inside of the hangar in every detail as you walk around. You can't tell you're not in a hangar. And they did the same thing on the insides.
Mm-hmm.
Because of Bob's memory, they were able to recreate absolutely everything. And
this is S4 that was dug back into a mountainside that was actually a cave, right? That's what made up the hangar.
It was a flight test facility cut into the base of a mountain that was camouflaged so well that if you drove by it, you couldn't tell that there's doors that opened up and out will come a UFO.
Mm-hmm. Now, you believe everything he said about the UFOs that he worked on are back engineered. Did he tell you details? You're an Air Force guy, and you have knowledge of air flight and all these jets. Do you believe the details he gave on the UFOs? Did he ever tell you in depth what he saw?
He said if you want to go from here to the other side of the universe. To say this piece of paper is the universe.
Mm-hmm.
You're here and you want to go here. You come up, you focus where you want to go. And as soon as you let off, you're there. There's no time interval. So you can go across 3 billion light years of our actually now it's 24 or 27 million light years across.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll probably double again when they get something more advanced in the James Webb Space Telescope.
Mm-hmm.
But he said you're there instantly.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to try to go to your pictures and not let you narrate them. I'm hitting
Okay.
share, and then I'm going to go to the files and see if I can pull them up, and you will tell me and narrate the pictures that we're showing. And let me see. Okay. Let me see the first one here. That's this one.
Oh, that's me at Beale. I'm in an SR-71.
Mhm.
I'm in. This is 961, and
That was you. Yeah.
that's me. That's me.
Wow.
Yeah,
You're a handsome young lad.
I had dark hair at
Yeah.
one time.
We
Yeah,
all did at one time, right?
yeah.
But that was
This is
tell us.
this is the 1980s,
Yeah.
and
Did you fly in this thing?
no, no.
No.
Oh well, I do have a claim to fame that we'll get into in a bit. But
Okay. All right.
let's
Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is you again.
Yeah, I'm going in. I'm going into the Spirit of Pennsylvania. No, Crescent, the Spirit of Kitty Hawk.
Okay.
That's a B-2A stealth bomber.
Oh wow.
And during that trip, I also flew the sim for 2.5 hours.
Well, to the average citizen, they couldn't get that close.
No, they couldn't. And I was actually on top of the airplane. I looked inside the inlet. I walked, through all the walkways on the top of the wing.
Mm-hmm.
They said, the only thing we don't want you to photograph, we don't want you to photograph the exhaust ejector. So I didn't.
Wow.
I could have, they wouldn't have known it. I would have had it for myself, but that's not who I am.
Could you tell us what you thought that exhaust ejector looked like, or what the purpose of it?
Well, they use the same type of tiles they use on the exhaust ejector of the F-117.
Mm-hmm.
They're a modified material, the same material used on these space shuttle tiles.
Okay.
It's a silica. It's real lightweight, and it helps disperse the heat.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
and also they also have a variable ramp, so they can actually do some pitch up or pitch down with the exhaust ejector. It's kind of that's probably what they didn't want me to show. So,
yeah. Yeah. Let's go to the next one.
right.
And
Okay, I'm giving the book to this is Paul W. Tibbets IV. His call sign was Nuke. That's Paul Tibbets Jr., who dropped the bomb on
that's right.
Hiroshima. That's his grandson.
Wow.
And I gave him one of my Blackbird books.
And where was this taken at? Where's the
This
picture?
was taken at Whiteman Air Force Base in 2014.
Well, okay. Let's go to the next one. And that's
okay.
You in some.
I'm at the ballast control station of the deadliest submarine in the world's ocean. It is the USS Connecticut, SSN 22. It's one of 3 Seawolf submarines that were built. It was designed for the Cold War. One Seawolf class submarine is capable of taking out the entire Soviet Northern Fleet.
Wow.
It can dive to 2,000 feet. It has 8 torpedo tubes. It has a 2-story torpedo room, and it's as wide as an Ohio class ballistic missile submarine. but it's only about 350 feet in length versus the 560
Yeah.
on the Ohio boats.
I'm looking
But
at all those controls. You have to be highly trained to do this.
to get your dolphins, whether you're a cook or whether you're the captain, you have to be able to stand at every station on the sub as a stand-in case of emergency. So you're going to have to know what is the red klaxon horn for button. This is
Right.
just above my head on the as you're looking at it up in the upper right. There's a
Mm-hmm.
green one. There's a yellow one, and I think there's a white one.
Yeah.
The red klaxon is I believe that's there's something something's been damaged. It's an emergency. It's a call to station. So any place that you are in a case of emergency where your station is, that's where you're supposed to go when that thing goes off.
Now, what year was this ship
This is this is
active?
this is 2017.
Okay.
And the first Seawolves have been around since the 80s.
Okay.
And again, they built 3 of them. And with the end of the Cold War, they didn't need them. So they came up with what they call Seawolf Light, which is the Virginia class, which
Mm-hmm.
I've been on that one as well. I've been on 21 nuclear powered submarines of the United States Navy. And that's not bad for an Air Force guy.
No, it's not, especially
Yeah.
an Air Force guy being able to get a foot in the door of the Navy. Yeah.
Right.
And there you go
Right.
with that being so slick. You can navigate anywhere. That's great. Let's go to the next one.
Okay, that's my certificate for flying the B2 simulator.
Okay.
And it was June 4th, 2014. And they said it was only 2 hours, but it was actually 2.5 hours.
Okay.
And I'm not a pilot, but I was able to connect with the KC-135R. It took me 2 tries,
Mm-hmm.
and the instructor pilot who was in the right seat, he said, "You've done this before." I said, "No, I haven't." He said, "This is just beginner's luck." And he said, "Well, I've been doing this. I flew heavies for 6 years before I came into the B2 program."
Right.
And he said, "It took me a half a dozen times for me to hook up. And you can hook up on your second try." I said, "Beginner's luck." And so we're coming in for our first touch and go. Now I'm a numbers guy. I recognize numbers, tail numbers, and whatever. And the tail number on the KC-135R that was refueling the simulator, it had the correct serial number, which tickled me. Someone paid that much attention. You could see the boom operator, but you couldn't tell if it's male or female. You could just tell there was a person there.
Hmm.
But it was. I'm the only guy in my neighborhood to have flown the simulator of the
Yeah.
B2.
Yeah. It's fun flying the simulator, but when you fly in real life, it's a little scary, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and because there's no verticals as you're coming up, that airplane is sliding all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go this way, you have to cancel it by going back the other way. So it's an airplane that takes a while to get used to.
Okay. Let me go to the next one. And
Yeah.
oh, there we go. And
That's
what was this?
not a very good shot of me. I'm standing on the X-59. The guy in the light blue shirt is Jeff Babion. He
Okay.
was the vice president, general manager of the Skunk Works.
Okay.
And this is when I had my book signing. The gentleman behind me is I should remember his name, but I'm terrible with names.
And what year was this?
This is June 3rd, 2021.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So the X-59 is finished. It's done now. It's been moved to Edwards. So the first flight should be coming up pretty soon.
Okay. I see the jet engine. It
Second,
must
I
be
lost
on.
my earpiece.
It's on top of the fuselage, right?
All right.
The jet engine is right on top of the fuselage. It looks like.
No, that's the inlet, and it's down inside the fuselage. So
Okay.
it's an F414 General Electric engine, the same engine that's used on the Super Hornets, the F-18 E's and F's and G's.
Yeah, could I ask you why were you invited during this?
Yeah,
Jim?
I was invited by Jeff to do a book signing.
I
I
see. Okay.
I signed my 75th anniversary book there. I signed about a dozen of them.
Wow. And you got 29 books you wrote, and we
Oh,
might get to some of the covers on one of these pictures.
yeah.
So let's go to this one.
Oh, that's me in my
That's you.
A12. That's me in my A12.
Yeah.
This is the eighth production A12. I think it had 253 flight hours on it. No, 253 takeoffs and landings, 460 total flight hours.
I
And
recognize this one. Yeah.
and I have the distinction of being the only person on the planet to been in a cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside a C5. Because and you should have some of my pictures of it of the me
Yeah, I'll
putting the
probably come up with those. Yeah.
yeah
Let's go. That
uh,
was that's you with the Skunk Works, I guess.
yeah that's Jeff Babbion and that's my book and it's the resolution's pretty bad so
Yeah, I'm trying to shrink it down to get it looking
yeah
better. Looks a little
yeah
better, smaller.
yeah
Okay.
and and
Do you know?
the thing I'm holding in my hand is a pewter skunk. I'm the only non-skunk work person ever to get one. Normally, if you're up in the food chain at the Skunk Works and you retire, you get one of those.
Right.
Well, I got one without being an employee of the Skunk Works.
Right. Now,
And
why did they call it the Skunk Works? That's interesting, Jim.
uh, back in 1943, when they were developing the P-80, that was the first airplane to come out of the Skunk
Hmm.
Works. Because it was so secretive, and they were doing stuff, and it was sort of they were doing stuff that was smelly. There was a cartoon strip back in the 40s and even through the 60s, I think. It's called Little Abner. And there was a place where they made typical joy juice, which is their moonshine.
Hmm.
And they called it the Skunk, Skonk, Skunk Works. And the syndicate that owned Little Abner's told Lockheed, you can't use that name, it's registered. So skunks. So we'll just change it to skunk. And so they had a Disney artist create. I think it was a Disney artist create the skunk that you see behind, and that's been their mascot ever since.
Hmm. Wow.
And it's just everything about the Skunk Works is special, including especially the people. They
Right.
got more done with fewer people than any time or any company can do.
Hmm.
Okay, next.
So the next here's is this some of your books, I guess.
Yeah, this is some of my 29 books.
Right.
The center one on top is my
Right.
75 years of the Skunk Works. The one underneath is my most recent book, which is Nautilus to Columbia class, and it's the pictorial history of all 227 nuclear powered submarines built and ordered or under construction for the United States Navy. The one in the upper left is my Blackbird book at Shefford. The other one on the upper right is my B2.
Hmm.
And then my volumes 1 and 2. Volume 1 is the lower left underneath my Blackbird book. That's on the Los Angeles class and Los Angeles class improved. And then the other one on the right, far right, is on Virginia class and Seawolf.
Okay.
And there where you have the cursor, that is the very first book written on the F-117, which I did with Bill Sweetman, and it sold 67,000 copies.
Oh wow.
It
That's
should have made the New York Times bestseller list, but they didn't have a category for that.
where did you get all your technical information? I guess I can't ask you who gave it to you, but you
No,
got it somehow.
I'm good at interviewing people.
I see. Okay.
I actually sat down with Steve Paulson, who was the 15th pilot assigned to the F-117 program. And my boss, Brigadier General Pat Bohab called me in his office one day on one weekend. He said, "Hey, Jim," he says, I'm flying with a guy who flew the stealth fighter. And no one knew anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, would you like to interview him? And I said, absolutely. So he gave me his name and number. I called him up. I lived in Minneapolis. He lived in Minneapolis. So I went over to his house. Bill Sweetman and I co-authored the book. And we put together 400 questions, starting with the most benign, non-critical. Was it designed and built in the Skunk Works?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is it black? Yeah. Does it drop bombs? Yeah. Is it a single cockpit? Yes. So those are questions you can answer regardless of the classification.
We're going to take a quick, I want to call out my show and everything. You're listening to Dave Emmons, and this is The Strange Reality. And I have a great, I got blessed with this one. James Goodall, Jim Goodall, as everybody knows him. And you should just know him by his name. And that's what we're doing the show about, and the pictures and everything. So if you just jumped in, that's what's Jim Goodall. And this is Dave Emmons, Strange Reality. And Jim, I guess we'll jump to the next picture.
Okay.
Groom Lake.
Okay, that's when in March of '94, my friend Stu Brown, he was the senior technical editor for Popular Science. I convinced him to do a story on Area 51, and we needed a patch for Area 51. So I took the Palmdale Air Force Plant 10 patch and modified it to do this patch.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn Campbell, the guy who ran the Area 51 Research Center, not the singer.
Yeah.
I worked with him. Excuse me. We made 10,000 patches, 2 inch and 3 inch, and we sold them all. They were even when I was at the Pentagon during Desert Shield and Desert Storm. They actually had the patches for sale in the exchange down in the lower level of the Pentagon.
That's really neat. Now, what the craft that's in this drawing here? What kind of craft was that?
That's just a triangle. It sort of represents the F-117 to a degree, okay. But it could be a TR-3B, which we didn't know anything about back then. And
that's interesting. Jim, could you tell us the difference between a TRB-3 and a triangle extraterrestrial craft?
They could be one and the same. There's the TR-3B is being seen all over the place. It's almost a perfect triangle. Mm-hmm. It has white lights on all 3 corners. It can move instantly, fast. Boom, it's gone. It's been seen all over the planet.
Yeah. I saw one 35 feet high, and it was only traveling about 30 miles an hour. Can they do that?
Yeah, they can fly backwards too. They don't make any noise.
This made a hissing sound that I heard.
Yeah, and the thing about UFOs, and I sort of got this from a friend of mine who works in that area. He said, if you see something printed up and it says UAPs, UAPs is really their designation for man-made flying saucers. Oh. And UFOs is alien manufactured flying saucers.
So that's the secret sauce. Okay.
Sort of. I don't know if they're going to stick to it, but yeah. But I'm very proud of that patch.
Yeah, it's a good looking patch. It really is.
Yeah. I still have a few of them left over.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd probably be a good collector's item.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
let's jump to the next one. And this, I'm gonna have to get this in focus, I guess. Nope. That's kind of
That's
hard to get in focus. It's got to go real small to.
I don't. That's not my photo.
That's not your photo. Okay,
Yeah.
there's
Okay.
Skunk Works.
That's my skunk. You can't see it very well, but it says someone who's enjoyed and been a big fan of Skunk Works products from day one. And it was just one of the nicest things I could have gotten from the Skunk Works, and I'm just really thrilled to pieces.
Okay, yeah, that's a nice dedication mark
Yeah,
there. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, there,
That's
James Goodall. Okay,
that's my airplane that I worked on off and on for 15 years.
okay,
That's an
and
A-12.
and this is your business card, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
and this here,
It's some of my Skunk Works stuff. Every instrument up there you can see has flown at least 2,000 miles an hour. And I have a triple display indicator, which is if you go right above where it says 75 on the Skunk Works, you go directly up that one instrument there is an A12. No, from the 75 on my book,
oh, I see.
and you go straight up. That's a TDI, the triple display indicator. The rectangular thing to the right, that's a stabilization augmentation system. It's called the SAS. The turbine blades in the back corners, those came out of 974. That was the last SR-71 to be lost. It had a catastrophic engine failure over the far western Pacific. Both guys got out, and the Mr. J58 there from the Skunk Works, he sent me two of the first stage compressor blades and the data plates off the two engines that were recovered
Mm-hmm.
after 974 crashed. And it's
Okay.
just this, and directly below where the cursor is the stick. Now, next shelf. That's from an SR-71. That was actually given to Tom Pugh when he was commander of Site 2, which was the SR-71 U-2 flight test and overhaul facility there at Air Force Plant 42.
Yeah, those people that are interested in aeronautics, this is great. I mean, this would be something. And this is the book that you wrote, right?
Right. That's the 5.5 pound, 384 page, 1,300 photos covering 43 Skunk Works programs. There's probably 43 programs I don't know anything about.
Right. And you had this completely authorized by the people on the inside of the Skunk Works, I guess.
But no, they were thrilled I was doing it. They said they budget constraints and whatever wouldn't allow them to help me out financially or whatever. Because at one time they were going to pay for the publishing, and I just pay me for my time.
Right.
And
now, did you have the military looking over your shoulder as you wrote this book?
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Nope. Everything I have in there is either through my own efforts or through public sources. They did say I had pictures of Senior Prom, which is a stealth cruise missile, looked like a baby F-117. According to Lockheed, it's still classified. And I had to remove the photos. I have the write-up on it, but I had to remove the photos from the original transcript,
right?
Because they're still classified. Skunk Works and Air Force both said, we can't deny you. You can print it up all you want. We don't care, but you cannot have it. I could not have the book on Lockheed property or Air Force property if I still had those images in the book.
Okay.
So that was the only thing I complied with.
Yeah.
Because it was an important program.
Yeah. Let's go to the next one. Here's Skunk Works.
Okay, this is I got this from Ben Rich just before he died, and it said to Jim Goodall, to Lockheed Skunk Works, biggest fan and the proud crew chief of number 128. Best personal regards, Ben R. Rich. 10 days later, he passed away on me. But
Mm.
I had a relationship with Ben that was a one-off. I don't know how I managed to get it, but I cherished it, absolutely cherished it.
Yeah, the people that you've been around rubbing shoulders with, I mean, it's fascinating. And there's
Here I'm doing the book signing at the Skunk Works,
okay,
and this is June of 21, so masks were
yeah.
required, except I didn't wear one. Uh, and I was signing books
Yeah. Who owned the Skunk Works, Jim?
It's Lockheed Martin.
Lockheed Martin. Okay.
Yeah, and it was a division of Lockheed California Company.
Okay.
Back in
And
the
this
day,
guy was the CEO, I guess.
he was the vice president general manager, so he was the head skunk.
Head
He is the 11th head of the Lockheed Skunk Works.
okay.
I have met 7 of the 11 heads of the Skunk Works: Kelly Johnson, Ben Rich, Jack Gordon, Frank Carlucci. Oh,
Now Kelly Johnson, isn't he the one who kind of picked out Area 51?
well, he told Dorsey Kammer and oh shit, my mind has gone blank. It's going about 25,000 things in my head right now.
That happens to all of us, buddy.
But it was Tony LeVere. He asked Dorsey Kammer and Tony LeVere. He told him, go out in the desert somewhere in the Southwest and find a place in the middle of nowhere where we could build a long runway and we could have a classified facility. So they flew all over the desert Southwest. They were up in Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona. And they found this place just east of the Nevada test site. And it was the reason it's called Area 51. There's in the headquarters or the command center of the Nevada test site, they have a big, huge map. I mean, it's 20 feet by 10 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And it has southern Nevada, Utah, parts of Arizona. And it starts with Area 1 and goes to about Area 200. And it was how they tracked the fallout. So if something fell on Area 50, the one right next to it is 51, and the one next to that is 52. So it became Area 51 because that was the box that Broome Dry Lake was part of.
Right.
So
let's go to the next one. That's a cockpit.
Yeah, that's the cockpit of my A-12. It's the only A-12 with a 100% correct, complete cockpit, and it's sitting on a pylon at the headquarters of the CIA now.
Okay.
Okay. You can't. It's kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
That guy is Jim Eastham. He was the 4th guy to fly the Blackbird.
I've seen him before.
And I invited him there when we loaded the A-12 into the C-5. Now I only had an 1.5 inches of clearance on the floor rail.
I see that. I see it. Yeah.
And we pushed her all the way in. The floorboard, the floor is 19 feet wide, 121 feet long. At the lowest place, it's about 13 feet. So I knew if we cut the wings off at wing station 112, took off the outer wheels and brake assemblies, it would fit. We'd only have about 3/4 of an inch on either side, but it'll fit.
Mm-hmm.
And if it was a little bit too tight, we could put a chain hoist or come along between the landing gears and torque them in if we had to.
Yeah, it looks like you were cramming a 5-pound brick in a 1-pound box.
Pretty much. But I was in the cockpit of this airplane at 33,000 feet at Mach 0.72 inside another airplane, and I landed it inside that cockpit.
Oh.
And I called Ben Rich and I said, I think I hold a record that no one else will be able to achieve. He said, what's that? I said, I'm the only person on the planet who's been in the cockpit of a Blackbird at 33,000 feet, a Mach 0.72 inside another airplane, and I landed it in the same configuration. He just started laughing. He said he was laughing so hard he almost wet his pants. So Jim Eastham, this is the first time in 25 years he had seen an A-12.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually flew my airplane. He was in my airplane, number 128. That was the envelope expansion airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in bad air. He was at 78,000 feet. He couldn't get above Mach 2.8, 2.75, whatever it was. And he was in bad air. So he lowered the nose, hit some clean air. He redlined everything, which means he had to go through his descent profile to get back to the base because he doesn't know what he cooked. And the instrumentation, for about 15 seconds before it had an unstart, he got that airplane at 2,391 miles an hour, Mach 3.56. And this airplane flew straight and level at 92.5. Bill Park took 939, which is airframe number, 139. He took it to 96,250 feet.
Wow, that's quite high, 96,000.
This is 50 plus years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not telling us everything they can do today, that's for sure.
No, I had my buddy at Skunk Works who had almost 40 years there. And I said, I know you can't tell me what you can't tell me.
Right.
But are you aware of anything that would get me excited? And he says, there isn't anything that I'm working on that gets me excited. And he was like the number 3 guy there. He said, Jim, and this is 5-6 years ago. He said, Jim, we don't have a strategic enemy. We have terrorist cells associated with Al Qaeda, ISIS, and whomever.
Yeah.
And it's unconventional warfare. Well, now we're the saber rattlers are rattling it towards the Chinese and towards the North Koreans and towards the Russians. So is there an SR-72 like was in Top Gun Maverick? I'd have to say I hope so.
Yeah.
In 1980, I think it was 83, at the Prompt Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, I was invited there by the director of engineering at Honeywell. He said, Kelly Johnson's going to be your keynote speaker. Would you care to attend? I said, I'd love to. So I'm in attendance, and Kelly got out there. He's talking. He mentioned me not by name, but by location. He said, what really irritates the hell out of me? He said, there's a toy company, which was Testers, out of San Diego. And they can talk and make a model of the little bird, which we can't talk about, which is the D-21. And there's some son of a bitch up here in the Midwest who apparently has got pictures of it and has had parts off the D-21. He was referring to me. Yeah, which I thought was funny in hell. But he said, again, this is 1984.
Yeah.
So that's 40 years ago. All right.
Mm-hmm.
He said, today we have the ability to go to Mach 4. This is an unmanned air breathing platform. We can go to Mach 4, Mach 6, Mach 8, Mach 12, or Mach 16.
Oh my God.
Speed costs money. How fast do you want to go?
Wow. Mach 16.
Mach 16.
Oh.
Now, in 1983, my dear friend of mine who was my roommate in my first permanent party base in Denver, he was an air traffic controller at this time in the Bay Area Tracon in Oakland. And I was over his house. He said, about a month ago, I had the craziest experience. He didn't know what my passions were. He found out, but he didn't know them at the time. He said, we tracked a manned air breathing platform with a bogus transponder that went through our controlled airspace of the Bay Area TRACON at about 8,000 miles an hour.
Oh, wow.
And if you put a string on Area 51 and you bring it up over, you go magnetic 310 and you go up and over and you go across Barrett Sea, you fly right down the center of the former Soviet Union.
So some of these films that they show, like TikTok, this thing, there's a capsule looking. Do we have technology that can stand still and then take off real fast?
Yep.
I thought so.
And I believe that TikTok is a man-made. It's one of ours.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
There you
are. When Elon's little boy was born, when he named him A-12, because the A-12 Blackbird is his favorite airplane, I sent him my Blackbird book. And I was tracking it, and I see that it got to his office. I called a friend of mine at Aviation Week, and I said, I need to get something to Elon Musk. Do you have his point of contact? And a guy told me what it was. So I sent the book priority mail. I'm watching it track. Apparently, he came into the office as his personal assistant was taking it out of the envelope, and he stopped and he said, "Is that for me?" And she said, "Yep." Opened it up, and he's looking at it, and she called me the next day. He said he got it and sort of held it to his chest, and it lives on his desk, not in his credenza, not in his bookshelf, on his desk. He said, "You call Mr. Goodall up and you invite him to tour SpaceX."
Oh.
So I got Michael Schratt and Joel Christopher Payne and myself went there last February for a tour of SpaceX. And there's a reason why Elon Musk can do stuff that he can do. He's an absolute, he's a one of a kind.
Yeah, I know. And he's also not a bad guy for being a billionaire, you know?
No, he's a real good guy, but that's me. And that's the Falcon 9. They have it the corner of the building right there on Hawthorne Boulevard.
That's the one that comes back and lands.
Yeah, and those black things on either side, those are the arms that come down.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the Falcon 9s have had 16 or 17 flights. The whole thing is just black covered with soot because it's been into space so many times, and they're just as reliable as can be. When North American Rockwell was building the engines, that was actually Aerojet for the Saturn V moon rocket, the F1 engine. It's 1.5 million pounds of thrust. It'd take you a year and a half to make one. Yeah. You know, the Saturn V, they had five engines putting out 7 million pounds of thrust. But it takes years to build the engine. Elon Musk is building his engines for his super heavy lift and for the Falcon 9, multiple engines a day. I mean, he has an assembly line. They're pumping up, they're just going out like cordwood. I mean, it's just boom, 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 one after another.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He is an amazing guy. He really
is. He is.
Yeah. Strange in other ways, but there's a picture of you.
That's not a very good one. I was taken last year in Hawaii.
Okay. Yeah. You lived in Hawaii for a while. It must have been beautiful.
I was the curator at the Pacific Aviation Museum in Pearl Harbor. I don't know where that is.
Yeah, that must be. Some of these pictures get in. Okay, there's Bob.
I'm in Bob Lazar's lab.
Okay.
This was last May, and he has all my books. And when I call him up, he never answers his phone, so I always call his wife, and she is just a sweetie.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go spend 2 or 3 days with him again this May.
Yeah.
And
That's great. That is are the government or the military, are they still bothering him or watching?
no, no, no. They may be watching him, but the cat's out of the bag. Uh, he's not holding back on anything. So and the movie, Bob was blown away at the quality and the
Yeah.
detail in some of the shots that Luigi had sent him. And I knew about the movie 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago when they first started it, but I was sworn to secrecy. So I said that the only thing I post on Facebook are stuff that Luigi has posted or Bob has posted, one of the two.
Now that's his laboratory at his house in New Mexico.
But no, this is in the state of Oregon. This is in Oregon State. This is in, yeah, it's in Southern Oregon. This is where he lives today.
Okay. Southern Oregon. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a nice picture of you too.
Yeah.
And there it is again.
We're out front, an S5.
Why did he name it S5?
Because he worked at S4. This is a new place. This is going to be S5.
Okay.
So Bob just has a wonderful sense of humor.
Mm-hmm. I can see he's got a nice face, and I've always liked him. I
Yeah.
I wanted to believe him when he come out with his stories, and it took me a little while to believe, and I think I finally now I'm getting the gist of what he was wanting to tell everybody. Let's
Yeah.
go to the next one.
That's not mine.
Okay, yeah,
Oh yeah, that's me last August. I was at the Air Force Museum, and I know a lot of people there, so I called up my buddy, and I said, Adam, I said, hey, can you get the cockpit open for me? Because
Mhm.
Lynn Hurley, which I was on her, I was a co-host with her when she was in the Boston area, and when she got married, she moved to Dayton, where her husband Dave had a house and
Mhm.
works out of there. So I said, I come through Dayton every once in a while. I said, next time I come through, she said, I'll give you a visit. She said, I would do anything to be able to sit in the cockpit of a Blackbird. I said, well, I'll
Yeah,
see what I can do.
I know a lot of aeronautical aficionados would love to have seen and done what you've done. Let's
Yeah.
go to the
And
next one. And
yeah,
now this
uh,
is a new one, isn't it?
this was everybody said this is a stealth boat. What is it?
Yeah,
They were trying to reduce the radar cross section of the back area of the F-18 E's and F's.
right.
And when they had modified the pylon configuration and shape, and that's the test fixture they used.
Yeah. I see battleships now that are kind of like ironclad. You can't see nothing on the inside of them. And they're small battleships. And I think the Chinese are afraid of them. And they're stealth, I guess, stealth battleships with lasers.
Yeah, yeah. Now they had the Sea Shadow, which is a stealth boat developed by Skunk Works, and they cut it up here a couple of years ago because no one wanted it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the Navy didn't want it, even though it did everything they wanted it to do. He said there weren't enough. The crew wasn't big enough to help anybody on future promotions.
Well,
We were like being a captain of a PT boat. I think there was 4 or 5 crew was all it was. The pilot, the captain, the XO, the navigator, the head engineer, and maybe 1 or 2 maintenance guys.
okay. Let's go to the next one. That's, it looks like an engine from the,
Oh, that's the D-21 drone. That's the front of it. It's me in yellow, and then Stuart F. Brown, who did the original article on Area 51 in Popular Science. That's him. He lives in Albuquerque,
okay.
and
And that,
we've been dear friends for almost 40 years.
so that's an unmanned aircraft.
That was launched initially by the mother airplane, the M21, which was an A-12 modified with a drone on top. But after 4 launches, the last one was a midair collision. They opted to go on to B-52s. So they had 4 operational launches of D-21s over China.
Mm-hmm.
The first one never came back,
Oh.
and they couldn't figure out what happened. And they found out that if you don't do a series of 90-degree turns to the right to
Mm-hmm.
update your INS platform, it just keeps on going.
Yeah.
And it crashed west of the Urals in the former Soviet Union. When Ben Rich retired, he was allowed for the very first time to go to Russia, and he met his counterparts at Mikoyan, at Sukhoi, and in Illusion.
Okay.
So he met all his counterparts. And when he was there, the head of the KGB, which may have been Putin for all I know, handed him a hand-carved box. And I'll show you what they gave, what they had. And take me just a second.
Okay.
I don't know. Oh, what this is, you can see, covering my face up.
Right.
That is the data plate
Yeah.
off of the Mark IV Ramjet on the D-21.
Mm-hmm.
And this drone had crashed west of the Urals. And they tried to back engineer it, and they couldn't.
Okay. Let's go to the next
I got to put my
film.
earpiece in. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we're running out of time. We're already going over the limit, Jim.
I can come back again.
Sure, I'd love to have you back, and can you explain this one, and then we'll kind of go.
Okay, this is I call it the exotic junkyard at Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of airplanes that will eventually go into the museum. What you're looking at is the nose of a X-15 mock-up.
Okay.
They had it on a pylon there at NASA Dryden, and they got damaged in a real strong windstorm. It sort of buckled the airframe.
Okay.
So they took it down, and now it's going to go. It's going to go to the Edwards Flight Test Museum once they're finished. They have a small little building with airplanes there. It's on the base. And unless you know someone or has base pass or military or retired military, you can't get on. So they're building the new facility right at the main gate. So you don't have to go. You can go to the museum once it's finished. And they need to raise $12 million. And I think they're having a hard time. I would think the aerospace companies that made billions off of spooky airplanes and stuff should throw in the money, but that's just me.
Yeah, it's actually showing their own history,
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to come out of the sharing, and we're going to get back to normal. Okay, now could you tell people this is Jim Goodall, and we just went through a lot of fabulous aeronautic history, and Jim, could you tell us where people can get a hold of you on your website or your books, where they can buy them?
Okay, I don't have a website per se, because it takes, I spend too much time on this freaking computer as it is.
Me too, yes.
But I'm on Facebook. It's
okay.
Jim Goodall 71, I think, is the total thing. There's a couple of Jim Goodalls, which surprised me. My books, if you go into Amazon and you punch in books by James, middle initial C, Goodall, Goodall, and my hardbound books come right up. I have my submarine books. I have my B-2 book, my Blackbird book, my 75 Years of the Skunk Works, the sub books. And then I have my soft cover books, which cover, primarily, again, Blackbirds and F-117s and stealth in general.
Right. Fascinating aeronautical history. You just
it's just fun. And I just had my 79th birthday, and I'm sort of reminiscing of how I got to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just absolutely dumbfounded some of the stuff I was able to pull off.
Yeah. You just have that natural knack as a salesperson, as you mentioned before, and you have a character that people can get along with, and they feel like you're part of them. I can feel that myself by just
Yeah.
talking to you, you know.
People that I meet over a period of time, no one has a neutral opinion of me. People either really like me or they can't stand me. I mean, I can remember when BJ's was still around. He was the old Marine sergeant that had
Mhm.
BJ's Corner.
Right.
Everybody congregates when the B2s are taken off and everything
Mhm.
there in Palmdale. And I'm up there. I hadn't said who I was. I'm talking to him. I said, and I asked him. I said, "Have you heard of a guy named Jim Goodall?" He said, "Oh, that son of a bitch." I said, he's a real ass. I said, "Oh, really? Tell me more." So he starts going on and on. I said, "I'd like to introduce myself." I said, I'm Jim Goodall." And his face just melted.
Oh my
He
goodness.
felt so bad. And I said, "I tell you what, BJ, I went to my car. I got my B2 walk around from Squadron Signal, and I autographed it and gave it to him." He said, My feelings aren't hurt.
Yeah.
I know people uh, who I was friends with for a while, and all of a sudden, next thing I know, they hate my guts.
Well,
And this,
I haven't found anybody that disliked you. I've talked to a lot of hosts that had you on the show, and they said you were just great person and a great show. And you
in
did a great show here too, Jim. I really appreciate it.
in this community of spooky airplanes, things that go bump in the night, it's the only place I have ever felt 100% accepted.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
good.
other areas. Oh, I mean, a good example. Uh, how well known I am.
Yeah.
This is June of 1996.
Hmm.
John Lear, the famous John Lear,
Right.
and I were at the fence line at Tonopah Test Range. It's 11 o'clock at night. We have our lawn chairs. We've taped up our cuffs, our pant legs with duct tape. Some scorpions can't go climbing up your legs.
Right.
And you don't want to sit on the ground because there's too many just critters.
Yes.
And we have Generation One night vision goggles, and we're sitting back there. There's all sorts of activity going down. The whole base is lit up, and all of a sudden I see three armored personnel carriers, one coming up from the south, the east, and from the west. So I stand up and yell real loud, "Hey, we're good guys, we're taxpayers." And all of a sudden we had floodlights on us. John had three little red dots dancing on his
Ooh,
chest. I
scary.
had I had three little red dots dancing on my chest.
Hmm.
And about the same time, there's another vehicle coming down the north on the north side of the fence, which is public lands. And this guy came around John's pickup truck with his. He's in Desert Utilities. He has his hand on his 9mm. He said, "You're in a restricted area, and I'm ordered to leave." And I said, "Sir, I don't know who you are, but this is public lands, and I don't need your permission to be here. I said you're in a restricted area, and I'm ordering you to leave." I said, "Who are you?" "I'm Captain so and so with ASI, which is Advanced Security Inc." I said, "Sir, you're a rent-a-cop. You have no jurisdiction on this side of the fence." And you could just see his jaws tightening up. He says, "I've been deputized by the state of Nevada to uphold the laws of the federal government, Lincoln, Nye, and Esmeralda County." I said, "Well, good for you." He said, "I want to see some identification." I said, "I don't have to show you squat. One, I'm not doing anything wrong. Two, you're not a law enforcement. You may be security on the south side of the fence, but you're not, you're nobody on the north side." And he's getting more and more irritated at me. And I said, "I tell you what." He said, "You show me yours, I'll show you mine." So he hands me his ASI badge and I give it back to him. I said, "Sir, that's not a valid form of ID. I need something issued by the state or federal government." And he's getting more pissed. So he hands me his Nevada driver's license. I didn't have these on, so I couldn't see what the heck he was, what it said, what his name was. I pulled out my Minnesota license because I lived in Minnesota at the time. Lear had his. He handed it there, and he hands it to a guy on the south side of the fence, takes it over to the supervisor's armored personnel carrier. It's now 11:30 at night,
Yeah.
and the interior light goes inside the APC, and I hear him say, and if you can beat this out if you want, "Oh shit, it's Goodall and Lear." The lights went off, the red dots went away, and they dispersed because they knew they weren't going to harass me out of the area.
Wow. I wish I had that much power just to mention my name and these people just spread. That's
I,
great.
I am not afraid of them.
That's a good story to end with. And Jim, thank you so much for being on the show. And you've been listening to Dave Emmons' Strange Reality and Jim Goodall, James Goodall, the historic Jim Goodall with all this aeronautical profession and career that he's been involved in with the military. Thank you so much, Jim. It's been a great show, and I love the pictures. Thank you.
Thanks, and hopefully when I'm on it another time, we'll use a higher resolution image.
Yeah, I those were the images I took off of your messages, and that
Oh,
didn't, yeah, that wasn't wasn't the great. I can shrink them, and the resolution would be better, but yeah, yeah, the pictures where we could have cleaned them up a little bit. But I want
yeah,
to thank you so much. Next time you're on, we'll get those resolutions straightened out, buddy. All righty.
that
Thank
sounds
you and
good.
good night, everybody. And Jim, thank you so much, buddy.
Hey, it was a gas. I enjoyed it. You have
I,
a
I
good one.
enjoyed it too, and I enjoyed the history that you put out there. Thank you so much. Good night,
My
everybody.
pleasure.